Titans fans, we've got something for you. We're going to address a lot of your comments in our video about Julio Jones coming up in just a minute. What's good, everybody? It's your boy Jay here with Unfair Sports, where we take a pensive approach to these sports conversation. And in this video, we're going to dive into all the crazy comments we've got from Titans fans thinking that we actually hate their team when we really don't at all. And speaking of which, is a way of talking through and going through things with fans. Titans fans, we've been thinking about this for a while. It's been over a month since we dropped our video about Julio Jones and the adding him to that team. And the question was, is it fair or unfair to say that the Titans are now a
Super Bowl
contender by adding Julio Jones? And so I'm going to address, there's a few things to address in this. And the comments in there are crazy. It's got a whole bunch of bad reviews, nothing but down votes. So I think we got like a 25% plus percentage on that video. Because Titans fans, y'all are mad. And you know what? Yeah, we're talking heads. We're a small up and coming YouTube channel, and so less than a year of doing this. Of course, you know we're not going to have a whole bunch of followers yet, but you guys found this somehow, and you're really going in. And so I appreciate it. I'm happy to see that you are there. We want more of your engagement, but this is something I want you all to understand about us. We're not delusional fans. We're not. You guys are. We're not. We're not going to walk in here and say everything you want to hear about your team when there's a situation where there's not a reason for us to say what you want to hear. Like the question here in this entire time was, Jimmy, is it fair or unfair to say that that Julio Jones makes the Tennessee Titans a contender? And I said it's unfair because you guys are already a contender. He didn't do anything to change anything for you guys. The last time you can think of, and somebody said this in the comments, the last time you can think of a wide receiver that actually changed somebody's trajectory into the Super Bowl, Keyshawn Johnson. That was early 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it took a few years for Tampa Bay to even go anywhere with him.
That was, 2002 or 2003?
2002 is when we won the Super Bowl that year.
Yes.
And I'm a Buccaneers fan, so I remember that. And Keyshawn was a pain. And we ended up getting rid of him. And we sucked afterwards. But that's not the point. My point behind this is that our focus is always to be thinking, not as a fan, on even our own teams. We're not here to argue with you. But we noticed something about you guys. Jimmy, you noticed a trend.
I did. And first and foremost, I want to echo some of the sentiments that you mentioned. First and foremost, we do appreciate the views and the comments
and the engagement. We love it.
It means a lot to us. We have no problem with your disagreement. And I think by and large, the majority of the comments, though they disagree with our take, were respectful. There were a few who maybe pushed the boundaries a little bit, but
standard trolling.
But for the most part,
we don't care.
Yeah, but for the most part, it was perfectly fine. Now, having said that, what I want you to know is that we're not your enemy. We're actually your friends.
Yes.
And we actually, I guess you could say, we look at ourselves in a sense as counselors to various fan bases, because what we're trying to do is to keep you from being a delusional fan base. Because what happens, you have these sky high expectations, you barely get out of the valley, and then you're left with nothing but disappointment, pain, and sadness in between. And from that comes bitterness and anger that you carry over to the next season, where the exact same thing happens. We see this a lot in this part of the country with Dallas Cowboys fans. So we're very familiar with that type of thing happening. We don't want that to be you, just because you got a star wide receiver who's on the wrong side of 30, who didn't play a lot of his games last season because of injury. So we don't want you to do that. We don't want you to be that. Now, in a sense, I think you misunderstood part of what we were trying to say. From a lot of the comments that I read, the theme that I got out of that is that you think we're saying your team is trash. You think we're saying your team has no chance whatsoever. And that's not the case. Your team is good. Your team is solid. I like watching your team. And in a sense, as I made my comments in the last show from June 8th, I believe, I kind of set a bit of a trap for you, because Jay's take was, I can't trust Ryan Tannehill. And when has a star wide receiver ever swung someone from where they were, which is losing in the wild card round of the playoffs last year, Titan fans, to winning the Super Bowl? I said, no one knows anyone on defense. Now, having said that, of course, being the NFL junkie that I am, I can name people on your defense because I watched them play, and they're one of 3 teams I use on Madden. So I know who you have. But part of what I was trying to say is that outside of Tennessee and maybe junkies like us, nobody knows who's on your defense, and that's for a reason. So we're not saying they're not good. We're saying they're just not good enough. And Julio Jones is not going to take you from where you were to where you want to be. He can help you, but you need other things on defense. You need other questions answered about Ryan Tannehill, or playoff Ryan Tannehill, who only had, 165 passing yards, a touchdown and an interception in their playoff game last season. So we have questions surrounding that. The same questions you need to be answering, and that you need to have a realistic expectation of what this team is. Julio Jones is not going to lead your team to winning 60-0 in the playoffs. In the Super Bowl, it's not going to happen, and you have to understand that.
Yep.
So that's my first point. You misunderstood what we were saying. Your team is not bad. We're just saying that they're not quite good enough. And I have a question for you, and I have another point later on. But Jay, I want to kick it back to you.
Okay, yeah, we're going to jump more into that, and I want to add to those sentiments. Of course, we're talking to you guys, Titans fans. This is all for you, and all of our typical listeners of the pod. Yeah, we need to address these Titans fans, and these are basically the arguments. You got the Tannehill, you got the we have one here that's telling me Anthony
Ferkser, who no one has heard. I've heard of him because I've seen him on two catches, 44 yards in the playoffs last season in the playoff game, which is good. But I'm not seeing a Mahomes to Kelsey connection between Tannehill and Ferkser.
Now I can see Ferkser evolving into something later, because especially after the way Jonnu Smith did. But I don't know that yet. Mm-hmm. You do not win Super Bowls on paper. You don't win championships in any sport on paper. No matter how beautiful your team looks on paper, there's no guarantees you're going to win it. I am a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. We played in the NFC South. The NFC South at one point had probably the best lineup of quarterbacks in the NFL, from Cam Newton, who had just come off an MVP, Matt Ryan, who had an MVP right after Cam Newton did, and then Drew Brees, who has a Super Bowl win and still statistically throws up some numbers. Mm-hmm. And as much as you want to love him or hate him, Jameis Winston was a good quarterback in the NFL. He just made a whole bunch of dumb mistakes. Yep. The problem is that they made him throw the ball more than he was supposed to. When he threw the ball less than 30 times in a game, his interceptions went in half. He would have only 15 interceptions on the season. It was when he was throwing the ball too much is when the turnovers start coming. But that's his game. That's who he is. No one reeled him in. But my point is that I saw my Buccaneers get Tom Brady and all those pieces we had, and you can attest to it. I was not sold on us winning the Super Bowl at all.
And that is the right approach that you want to have. Now, this frustrated me throughout the season, especially around week 9 or week 10, when I knew Brady had been given full control of the offense. And I came on this show, I said, Jay, this team is dangerous. Jay, this team can go through the playoffs. And you would not believe it. You would not invest all of your time and energy into it. And that's what it is. You want to be surprised by your team winning the Super Bowl. You don't want to expect it. Why? Because if you expect your team to win the Super Bowl, there's a very good chance they're not going to win the Super Bowl. And where you're going to go.
And to add to that, this is the reason why I was pulling back on Tampa Bay. I didn't know what our defense was going to look like later in the season. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I've learned about the way things have worked in every team that wins a Super Bowl. What does your defense look like? It's a game of attrition. What does your defense look like later in the year? Your quarterback is Ryan Tannehill. I like Ryan Tannehill. I liked him coming out of Texas A&M. I liked him at Miami because I thought it was interesting that he went from wide receiver to quarterback and he would still be able to put up numbers. Correct. That tells me that he has talent. He went to Miami, and as much as you guys want to say that we talk about Adam Gase and how he has cursed all his quarterbacks, Tannehill had his best years with Gase. He had his best years statistically. He did. Look at the numbers. He had his best years. He had some of his best years there.
I did not know that.
So, okay. Tannehill is a good quarterback, but in that playoff game against the Ravens. Now, this is the thing too to remember. There are 4 teams in the AFC that I am sold on our Super Bowl contenders, and every single one of those 4 teams should be worried about the other 3 teams. Every single team should be worried about the other one. The Chiefs, the Titans, the Bills, and the Ravens. Because out of all 4 of you, any one of you can beat the other anytime because your teams are stacked and set up properly for it. But when your playoff game and you played the Ravens, you beat the Ravens the year before, and then last year you lost. What happened in that game, Jimmy? I'll tell you what happened. They shut down Derrick Henry. Then they put the clamps on A.J. Brown. Mm-hmm. Corey Davis was man, but Tannehill couldn't figure it out with everyone else. Mm-hmm. Most Super Bowl winning teams that get to the Super Bowl, they use every single weapon they have on their team. Go look at the Super Bowl winners over the last few years and look at their top receivers. Philadelphia, Nelson Aguilar. Wasn't he getting clowned by Philadelphia fans?
Yep.
After winning a Super Bowl? Before winning a Super Bowl? But he was one of their best receivers in that game. The Patriots, look at all the Patriots receivers they've had. Chris Hogan was the one that was their best one the last time they won a Super Bowl. Chris Hogan. Wasn't even Julian Edelman because he didn't play. Gronkowski couldn't do it. You have to incorporate everybody at quarterback. And that's what it is for me with Tannehill, is that he's just not that good at doing that part. He's a really good quarterback. He just hasn't shown me he can do that. And he's been in the league for long enough to be able to show me that. Period.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to the defense, when I made my comments on the previous show where we talked about this, I said you're not a Super Bowl contender because in order to be that in your conference, you need to be amongst one of the 3 or 4 best teams or have the 3 or 4 best rosters. And I said that this Tennessee team, though solid, is at about 5 or 6, having the 5th or 6th best roster in the NFL. So I'm sorry to tell you this, but if you're going to come at us or come at me for that, there's somebody else you got to come at, and that is Pro Football Focus, who every year ranks all of the NFL rosters from the best, number 1, all the way to the worst, or least best. I mean, they are professionals. 32.
Least best.
So this year, this came out several weeks ago. So you had, as far as the AFC rosters, you had Chiefs, number 2 best roster in the NFL, Browns, 3rd best roster in the NFL, Bills, 4th best roster in the NFL, Ravens, 5th best roster in the NFL. I'm already at 4, and the Broncos at 10 somehow, 10th best roster. That's 5.
Understand how the Broncos are ranked that high besides their quarterback.
I can get to that.
But quarterback being as bad as it is, but I'm thinking it's everything else. But yes.
And then you get to Tennessee at number 13 in the NFL, making them the 6th best roster according to Pro Football Focus. When you talk about analytics, analysis, all of that, experts, this is where they ranked them, exactly where I said. And I said that before this came out. So if you're going to come at me, you have to come at them as well. Now, one of you listeners on YouTube, one of the comments, I believe Michael M, said that last year the Titans defense was the 29th ranked defense. He said that. I looked it up, 28th in yards allowed, which is usually one of the easy to focus on stats as far as how many, because if you're giving up yards, you're giving up first downs, you're getting scored on, etc. And 29th in team pressures. Now, part of the delusion from this fan base is they believe that Bud Dupree, off of an ACL injury, who played in Baltimore, 6 months, is going to come in and pressure the quarterback every down and get 15 sacks. That's the feel of what I get from how much they're putting on Bud Dupree, and that is not fair. Bud Dupree is a really good player, but that is not fair to put that on him 6 months removed from ACL surgery. And Danico Autry. Now, I will admit, I know the name. I don't know exactly where he came from, where he played last season, and how good he is. But between those two, I don't know if they're going to take you from 29th in ranked defense all the way to top 10. You'll be better, but I don't think you'll be good enough to surpass those 5 rosters that I mentioned. Now, you talked about the Broncos. They've got guys on both sides of the ball, especially in secondary.
They do. Their defense is ridiculous, but their defense is ridiculous damn near every year, especially with the way Von Miller's anchoring that. But no, you're right. And I talked to one of you in the commenters about this. Defensive ranks. Y'all ain't ranked defense ain't been good in years. Y'all had a top 10 defense in about 10 years.
No Pro Bowlers on defense last season. That's what I was meaning when I was saying nobody really knows who's on your defense because you don't have any Pro Bowlers, any guys who have reached elite status quite yet.
Right. And I love Malcolm Butler being an anchor out there for you all, and he's gone.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, that was my point of I don't know nobody on defense. Bud Dupree, 6 months after ACL injury and surgery, even with modern technology and the way that has evolved and gotten better, you know what my thoughts on Bud Dupree is? I need to see him next season. This season is going to be him getting back to, because no matter what anybody tells you, you tear anything on your body, you still have that in the back of your mind. That body part was injured, and you have to work through mentally to get past it. As Tiger Woods, he talked about that all the time with his ACL and his back. After he had surgeries and stuff, he didn't have the swing he wanted for about a year until he felt more comfortable. Certain people, they do that. No matter what, it's a natural instinct to think about that injury. So I think Bud Dupree's going to be really good for you guys in the future. I thought it was a good pickup. I don't think it's going to be this season. I think next season, I do see you all being better, especially if the roster continues to evolve the way it does. And then if I see all these offensive weapons, last piece with this, for me, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones are going to be really good next to each other. Can Tannehill get them both the ball? while still having a run dominant offense. Because the way you guys are sounding is you want this team to throw for 4,000 yards this season.
5,000.
Or 5,000. You want this to be a 5,000 yard passing team. I'm trying to figure out, when do you guys expect this to be a 5,000? Because Tannehill had a 4,000 yard passing season and a 4,200 yard passing season in Miami.
Are you serious?
Yes. He threw.
Wow.
Actually, in 2014, he completed 66% of his passes. He was really good. 27 touchdowns, 12 picks. The next year, 24 touchdowns, 12 picks. This year, last season, 3,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 picks. So he's gotten smarter at quarterback. And I knew that he was smart at quarterback because I liked him. I liked Tannehill. I said I liked Tannehill coming out of A&M, just the fact that he could switch positions like that. But the key thing that you guys got to remember as fans, this is the point of all of this. As we're growing as a channel and being sports junkies that we've been for 30 plus years, I want you guys to understand this. You do not win Super Bowls on paper. You will never hear me say a team's going to win the Super Bowl on paper unless I've seen them win that Super Bowl on paper before. Well, unless I've seen them win a Super Bowl before. I can't. I don't bet against Tom Brady, even though last season was not sold on my Buccaneers winning. I won't bet against Tom Brady. I won't bet against Patrick Mahomes now because he's out here doing stuff to people that's kind of crazy. And the reason why Tampa kind of won that game of attrition, that offensive line got shut, was horrible for Kansas City because of all the injuries, and it worked out exactly what. And our defense was really elite. So, with that, Tennessee fans, thank you for tuning in and watching this. I know you're pissed off at me even more. I'm gonna love it, guys. I want all of the smoke. Bring it in.
In the comments, I want you all to tell us what your expectations are for your team next season, as far as how far you think they're going to go. Because from what I read and what I saw, I really do believe that you think your team is going to win the Super Bowl 60-0, just because of Julio Jones and Bud Dupree. That was all you needed in order to get there. So do tell us what your expectations are, and that will really help this out. And another thing too, you need to leave this behind. Nobody cares about what your team did in 2019. Nobody cares what they did in 2020. You cannot live off that and say your team is going to do that and more this season. You have to look at what your team is now, and you have to give yourself the space to accept what they become. So don't look at what they are now and think that because of what we did in 19 and 20, and because now we have Julio Jones, that we're going to go this far. You're going to be solid. You're going to be good. Mike Vrabel is a good coach, but don't become Cowboys fans thinking that every single year, no matter what everybody else around you has done to upgrade their roster, that your team is the best just because they're your team. Don't do that. Don't set them up for those type of expectations, because the only thing that's at the end of that road for you is depression. So Don't do it.
It ain't gonna work. And I'll give it to this to you guys though. I definitely put you guys above the Cleveland Browns, even though everyone is saying that their roster is one of the best rosters in the NFL. I still have your roster above theirs, and I don't know most of your young defensive players yet. And honestly, I don't need to research it. I have no reason to. If you're not gonna be on TV, there's no reason for me to really look you guys up. Period. Now, when I start watching it through the season and I start playing a little bit more Madden and I start really getting into it, I'll learn about your guys. But you guys are obsessed with your team. I'm obsessed with my Buccaneers. That's really the only team I care that much about. But I do enough research to understand, okay, does this person jump off the screen for me to where I need to address them? And Bud Dupree this coming season, no. The season afterwards, definitely will say that Bud Dupree is going to be a difference maker for your defense. I just need to see what he looks like coming off that injury. I have been burnt too many times going in saying, oh, this person's going to be this. He's going to change this. He's going to change that. I've been burnt too many times to ever bet on a team until I see them, especially a newly constructed team, until I see them on paper. Period.
Don't get burnt.
Don't get burnt.
With the medicine. Listen to us.
Don't get burnt.